Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 187, and after a week off, we are back. Players are at Hotspur Way. Preseason, the air smells a little bit like the preseason. It's right around the corner. You can just get that sense. You can feel it in the air. We have a lot to discuss on today's pod. There was nothing to discuss a week ago, and when you take a week off from doing this, all of a sudden the news builds up. So we have a busy pod today. We're going to talk a new signing through the door. We're going to talk preseason vibes and feelings there. We're going to talk a little bit of international football as well. And for you United States fans and you US listeners, you US based listeners, we are going to talk a little bit as well about the US men's national team and the chaos that has ensued there. We're going to save that for the end of the pod so that you folks who are just here for Spurs can listen to that part and then bow out if you really want to. But we are going to talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team as well. We've got a big crew on hand to talk about it all. We'll start by throwing out to Scott. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's going on, my friend?
Not much. Chilling. Nice Sunday afternoon. Yeah, it's been a while. So excited to talk Spurs. As you said, a lot to go over.
There is a ton to go over. Excited to do it with Todd. He is at TC_Kasho. TC, what's up, man?
What's up, buddy? Any day that you can get together and talk about a generational talent coming into our midfield is a good day, and I'm excited to do so.
Caroline is also here. She is at CG Stefko. Kaz, what's going on with you?
Well, usually I would say not too much, but maybe too much for me lately. I'm in the middle of a move, so it's nice to take a break and just talk about Tottenham and not think about packing or being in a car for 13 hours shortly. So
yeah, a lot of transition, a lot of movement going on. Transfer season for everyone, I suppose, would be the way to put that. But let's start by talking a little preseason training. Guys, I looked at the calendar and realized, we're now in July, which is nice, but also that Spurs in about 10 days are playing their first preseason match. That is against Hearts, I believe. And that is just insane to me. And the fact that preseason, we're getting like photos and training photos is beyond me. Scott, are you like super hyped for this, or does it feel too soon? Is there still a little bit too much international football going on and summer and heat, or are you kind of ready for this to start to ramp up over the next handful of weeks?
I'm ready, man. I obviously international football is dead to me at this point. I know we got the Olympics coming back up, so I'll be revived. But as of right now, I'm ready. I'm ready for some club football. Without a doubt, it's that point in the football manager cycle where it asks you if you'd like to start a new season, and you click yes, and you go and you see that you now have maybe $100 million to spend, and things just seem brighter. And yeah, it's a good time for sure. So I'm ready.
TC, do the Olympics do anything for you? I would say they do on the women's side for me, but on the men's side, I'm just not really that interested in the Olympic tournament.
I'm so soured on the way that U.S. men's soccer is being run right now. The exclusion of Diego Luna from that roster is a complete fucking farce. And I can't, like, after that point in time, I looked at this and I said, you guys aren't serious about trying to do anything of note here. So that's fine. I'm obviously going to root for the badge and the crest because, it's how we do. But I'm thoroughly discouraged with the way that U.S. men's soccer is being run.
And again, something we will get into, but we're going to try and keep it Spurs centric here for at least the first half of the pod. Caroline, I'm interested in your, how do I put this, football diet, because you consume, I think, more football than probably the three of us gentlemen here combined. You consume so much football, and I applaud you for it. It's honestly a testament to your fandom. But are you ready for actual preseason Spurs football to be coming down the pike here in another 10 days?
I don't know about ready. To me, it's crazy that we have preseason starting like before the Olympics begin. Because I know on the men's side, it's really not as big of a deal because it's youth teams. But I don't know. That still feels off to me because I feel like the summer is for international football, and we really should wait for that all to ramp down before preseason begins. But I mean, I'm going to watch, of course. Don't get me wrong. But I am really excited to see the U.S. women's team in the Olympics because I think this could really be, a good opportunity for us to get back to where we want to be in the international pecking order. New manager, some exciting new players. I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the women's side. The men's side, I don't even know who's managing the men's team in the Olympics. So that's whatever.
I mean, who knows who would be managing them regardless.
Nico not going to be here next year. It doesn't. Who gives a shit? It doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. There's again, we're gonna save it, but there's a lot. Yeah, 6 weeks from tomorrow, Monday the 8th, will mark the start of Spurs season. They of course open up against Leicester, and so 6 weeks is not a long time, and that's why they're gonna cram in all these preseason games over the next 6 weeks. I believe it's 5 games over the next 6 weeks. For preseason and training, for those players who are around is underway, and that is a big deal. I guess the place we'll kick this conversation off is the big signing that came through the door last week. Archie Gray, the 19-year-old, comes in from Leeds United. He joins with Joe Rodon heading in the opposite direction, and we can talk about Joe Rodon a little bit as well. But obviously the big story here is Archie Gray. Now, I know there's been a lot of discussion and consternation about where Archie Gray fits into this team and what position he will play. But Scott, what are your kind of first impressions upon, Archie Gray joining Spurs and kind of where he fits into Ange Postecoglou's side?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is he's versatile, which is not only important for the club right now, but I think it's like a primary attribute of the best players in the current, shape of football. They're able to play different positions and play them well. So I think, he's well versed at either side as a fullback, on either side as a fullback rather, and then seems to be quite a talented number 6 or number 8, depending on how he's asked to play. But the one thing above all else for me that I'm seeing as I learn more and more about him is he seems to be incredibly press resistant and really good at helping get the ball out of the back. It's something that we saw Basuma do really well for the first 8 or 9 weeks until he lost form and, wasn't capable of helping us progress the ball out of the back. But it seems like he's very comfortable in tight spaces with the ball at his feet, in and around his own 18. And that's exactly the type of profile that we're looking for. So.
Yeah, I don't think we can understate the value of a signing like Archie Gray, or overstate it for that matter. And the reason why I say so is because of the versatility piece that Scott already mentioned. But moreover, I think it's the level of confidence that he brings to the table and the humility that goes along with it. If you've actually listened to anything about this, he's got a little brother that plays in the Leeds Academy, and who Archie Gray swears his little brother is better than he is by a mile. And so that kind of mentality and the way that he shows up to training every day and the way that he does what is asked of him. I mean, if you remember, Gareth Bale started out as a left back on this team. So you kind of work your way into your position over time. This very much kind of emulates the signing of Bale. And when we did it, coming from the Championship, a very young man, but at the same point in time, proven his ability in the physical league that is the second tier of English football. There are a lot of similarities here between kind of that trajectory for Archie Gray. And I think that what's kind of awesome is Lucas Bergvall coming in. This is a personal note. Lucas Bergvall coming in at the same time. I think that we're looking at these pictures now, and in 5 to 7 years, we're going to look back and be like, this is the stalwart, engine room of Tottenham Hotspur that we saw rock up the same day to first day of training. So also, it must be said, the BetMGM logo on the training stuff is kind of trash, but it's a little fitting, seeing as the training gear looks like Man City gear. So it lines up.
I didn't even put the BetMGM thing on the agenda, but it is that is something that I did mean to bring up. I think I'm in the minority here where I don't really have that big of an issue with it. It's it is what it is. This is the world we live in, but I know that there are many differing opinions. I want to stay on track though for a second. Caroline, I think that the points that these gentlemen bring up are really great. The versatility factor, the youth factor, the fact that these are young players in both Gray and Bergvall coming in. I think the thing that encourages me the most about this is that these guys already have experience playing men's football at a high level. I mean, Archie Gray coming in from Leeds, a team that was right in the mix to potentially get promotion from the championship, and Bergvall, who's been playing men's football despite only being 18, 19 years old. Like, that's the difference between
not
these
even
guys coming
17
in
up until July 1st or whatever. That's why it was such a big stinking deal. Like he's a baby.
Yeah.
They're both babies.
Right. But they've been playing with men, which I think is like they've been playing grown ass football, which I think is a good thing as compared to some of our youth players who a lot of fans wanted for Spurs to bring up and throw into the mix in Premier League matches toward the end of the season last year, where it's like, no, these guys have been playing against people their own age and at the youth levels. I think the cool thing about these two new players coming in, and it is the two new signings, is that they have that experience under their belt playing at a high level, right?
Yeah. And, even speaking of our academy players, that we want to be able to make that leap soon, I think these new players we brought in are going to be a really good, sort of competitive influence for them in training as well. So to me, it's just a good thing all around. And obviously Archie Gray specifically was a player that was being looked at by a lot of other clubs. And it's hard to see a downside in this transfer, at least, from the very minimal research that I admittedly have done. But I think I'm really excited about the fact that he, I know the club said he can play it right back, and that's a position where we really have not had a backup for Pedro Porro. So that's a big relief going into the season, that hopefully, he's going to get some relief throughout the campaign and not be just played into the ground, which is always a concern. So yeah, I think it is encouraging that we have so many young players coming into the team at once who have a lot of potential. Because if it works out as we're obviously hoping it will, this could be setting us up for, a really strong next few, half a decade. And then to build from there,
I just want to say that does feel a little bit like Emerson Royale slander as he is close to departing, it looks like, to AC Milan maybe over the next week or so, but I hear you. And that is like
detected in what Caroline
said. Yeah, that's fair as well. There it is though important that, like, with Emerson Royale looking like he's heading out the door, that you do have this cover. And I do think that the versatility part does need to be underlined here again, because we don't really know where Archie Gray is going to fit best, but the fact that he could be a plug and play in a number of different roles, especially with so many matches coming for this team in a new season, being in the Europa League. Like, I do think that that's a really crucial part of this. He could provide, backup for Basuma, as Scott mentioned. He could provide backup for Porro at right back. He could start some matches for sure. Like, we just don't know. We don't know what he's going to be able to offer. So it'll be good. That's the part I think about the preseason that excites me, is to see a player like him. And not that I'm going to watch every minute of every preseason match, because that's just not my bag. But like, seeing him, seeing Lucas Bergvall, seeing how some of these younger players and some of the youth players mix in, and where they play and how they fit into an Ange Postecoglou system, I think is pretty damn cool. And that's kind of where some of my excitement lies for the next 6 weeks as we build up to that first match against Leicester. Scott?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think the only thing I would add to all of that, and this could be like a pseudo hot take, I don't think it is necessarily, but I think by the end of the season, Archie Gray starts ahead of Basuma in the midfield. And so I think we still may end up with a situation where we need a little more depth at right back. But I do think he was brought in primarily to supplement Pedro Porro for now and compete, for a couple different positions. But Harry Brooks, who I know we all follow, and I'm sure many who listen do, said it best. He said Archie Gray is that type of player that can play any of the 10 positions that are not keeper, and do it effectively and can do it well. And Harry even said, I'm no tongue in cheek here. This is not in jest, right? You could play him at striker, and by the end of the season, he'd be doing a really good job up top and scoring goals for you. So it just seems like he's just a complete footballer from back to front, and those guys and gals tend to be quite effective deep in the midfield, and I think that's eventually where he's going to end up playing for Spurs. So we'll see, but I think he's, as Todd already said, an absolute world-class talent who, it should be noted, 49 appearances last season. So he played a lot, right? He wasn't just like in and around the first team at Leeds. He was one of the first on the team sheet. And we paid $40 million for an 18-year-old, which I think in the past, Ryan Sessegnon, I may ask questions of the club doing something like that, right? But now I believe that we do things differently, as we all do from a scouting perspective, right? I think we're using data to make sure that we're spending our money effectively. I look at Tongi. We need to not talk about him anymore, so let this be the last time, right? But I think at that point in time, our plan for incomings was, now we have money because we're in the stadium and everybody's talking about this guy. So let's show the world we have some money and let's spend $65 million on this guy that everybody's talking about, is honestly what I think probably happened, right? Those days are gone. And when I see us spend $40 million on someone like this, who's so talented at 18 years old, it also tells me that the club is ponying up and living up to the expectations that the fans have been crying out for some time as well. So I think this is a bigger signing than just what's going to happen on the field with him too, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think this just kind of solidifies the approach that we've seen over the last few windows from the recruitment of this club, which is value-based youth signings that will either break through in the first team or have significant sell-on value because we got them at a bargain given where they, where they came in. What that actually looks like going forward with guys like Archie Gray is not necessarily my concern, because I don't get paid for that. What I get paid, you know what I mean? Like, that's what Ange gets paid for. And so what I'm excited about is that we can continue giving first team coaches options of youth and talent to bring through, as opposed to trying to make Emerson Royale play left back.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think the thing that, to Scott's point, this was a little bit of a swoop because Brentford apparently had a deal done for this kid, and Spurs
they fumbled the bag.
They fumbled it. And I think that part of that is, anytime you're going after someone that Brentford is going after, I think that's probably good, because I think Brentford are looked upon as they have a good recruiting staff and have been doing some of the right things in terms of those mid-table teams that we look at. We look at the likes of Brighton and those types of teams, Brighton, Brentford. I would say Wolves to an extent are in that mix, like the teams that kind of are run in a decent way for a mid-tier table type of squad. And the fact that they're able to swoop in and get this job done, and partially because of Joe Rodon too, I think. And I can't remember who it was. One of you guys mentioned Archie Gray was the first name on the team sheet. So was Joe Rodon last year for Leeds. And this is a team that was right on the brink of coming up, probably should have come up, to be perfectly honest. And the fact that Joe, and I don't want to dismiss the Joe Rodon part of this, because even though they were, quote unquote, technically separate deals, let's all call a spade a spade. This was all in the works here. The Joe Rodon experiment for Spurs, I think, will be looked at a little bit as a failure to some, and I don't think it is at all. I think this was a completely, I do as well. I think this was a completely logical thing where I think Joe Rodon has kind of found his spot, his level almost. And that's not, I'm not saying that to be disparaging at all. Joe Rodon was one of the best defenders in the championship last year, and probably could and still may be one of the best defenders on a mid to lower Premier League side going next year. We don't know if he's going to stick around at Leeds or not, but if he does, I think he's going to be one of the big reasons that they have a chance to go up next year.
They love it. And they're including him. As soon as that signing went through, they started including him on their promotional material, going out on their socials. I think that it's a great deal for Tottenham and Joe Rodon. We kept him long enough that we received loan fees along the way, and we kept him long enough that the sale of him for the price that we got will clear our books as a profit for us on Joe Rogan. So I look at that and I go, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for both player and club. He got the opportunity to play with 2 Welsh legends and Lucas Moura. Like, hard to argue with that from a Welsh Mafia individual perspective. So that in mind, I think that everybody involved, and the fact that he was the make weight for Archie Gray, and Archie Gray is legitimately a generational talent wearing the number 14 in the midfield, like Luka Modric, Jiminy. This across the board is quality business, in my opinion, from Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, and whether or not they're finagling some of those numbers to make it a in my eyes, it's a profit for all parties. Like you said, it's good for Joe Rodon. He gets to go in and, you know, be that person in the center of a defense for a really, really good championship squad. And gets to kind of find a home, which I really appreciate for him as well. I think that the only other really big news in terms of incomings from the week was from the youth side for Spurs. And they did this really cool announcement with their youth players, bringing in 13 new under 18 players. And the only notable name among them is George Feeney. Now, I'll admit I know nothing about George Feeney, but he was the name that we had heard of beforehand.
Yes.
And that's a cool thing as well. Like, they're
Because of
in,
Boy Meets World. That's why we all know George Feeney.
Well, I mean, respect to
Yeah.
Mr. Feeney, legit, but I think we can blame Wendy for this one, to be fair. I think that this is one that has come up in a youth update. Maybe Matty Hayes as well, threw some George Feeney vibes out there. That guy's pretty sharp. I don't know, man. I think that things, obviously, with the Euros and the Copa starting to shake out, I think we're going to see, you know, and past that July 1st deadline now, I think we're going to see a lot of things begin to unfold. Wouldn't shock me if we see, you know, a forward come in over the course of the next week or so. For Spurs, I know that Ange is going to want to get people in prior to going on the preseason tour, which is just a couple of weeks away, as you mentioned. So I think that there's a lot of good has happened, but I think that there's still a lot more poignant moves that need to occur before the season gets going if we really want this team to reach the heights that you know we've talked about.
Are there any other, before we kind of move on to some other stuff, any other transfer rumblings that you guys want to get off your chest? I know that there's a lot of rumblings right now about a Jamie Donnelly loan deal. There's a lot of rumblings about Jed Spence kind of being offered up to anyone and everyone. I know that
That's
Genoa was in on him. Right.
That's standard Levy business. He'll end up at Genoa. He'll end up at the price that Levy wants. It's just he's going to make everybody suffer for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on Genoa. That's just kind of standard Levy business. Same thing with the Emerson deal, right? Him to AC Milan is just a matter of, you know, €4 million or whatever the difference is. So that'll get sorted out on, you know, whatever timeline they want to do that there, or it won't. And Emerson Royale will come on you Spurs all over the social media for us for the whole season from the bench, and we'll go from there. I honestly think that it's going to be the incomings over the course between now and when we leave for the tour that are going to be the biggest thing. Jamie Donnelly, I think a loan out makes sense. I think we're going to have to sell Troy Parrott. I think that outright happens. I know that some Eredivisie clubs are into that guy. I think you loan out Velez and you hang on to Dane Scarlett, I think, for squad depth up front for the time being.
I think that would be dependent on a new striker coming in as well to
I don't necessarily see a new striker being the front of their mind. It wouldn't surprise me if you see like an Eze, right, and a Desiree Doué, the French winger, which you know how I feel about fucking left-footed French wingers. I want to kick them all in a bin. And, you know, with Nkudu and NG on the side of it, for F's sakes. But if this guy can come in and do some shaky business for Ange, or, you know, that'll work for me if we're able to have a reliable depth up front. Because I'm also, you love this guy to death, but I'm also very much on the sell Richarlison to Saudi Arabia for the right price train. So in that case, you know, I eat my words and we got to buy Jonathan David or something. I don't know.
Scott, you got any transfer hot takes you want to get off your chest?
Dude, I thought you'd never ask. Oh, fantastic.
It is that time. It is that time of year where I kind of just pass the ball to you and step back and let you shoot your threes.
We make stuff up. No, I don't disagree with anything that Todd's saying. I am maybe a little bit more inclined to believe that Richarlison can be the guy up top. And I mainly say that, that's going to cause an uproar to, amongst the tens of people that listen to us. But I think with Richarlison, when I look at the stint he had where Sonny was away at the Asian Cup, nine goals in 9 matches, and I don't think that accidentally happens, right? I think that's because focus shifted away from guys like Son who just draw attention and attract the ball, right? And it put us in a situation where we really had to build everything around a target man, which he can do pretty well in the box, right? So I think he can be the guy, and I think if we can get it worked out, that's fine. But I do think bringing somebody in up top would be really smart, at least for competition's sake. I do kind of like Jonathan David, right? So we'll see, and that's a name that's been tossed around. But I also think if you bring in enough depth out on the wings, say a Chiesa, who all jokes aside, I think could do a really good job under Ange.
That's some Juve Dave slander. Get out of here with that business. He left his ACLs at the Euros. Get out of here, bro.
That's definitely the concern with Chiesa, right? But that we're hearing other names anyways. Obviously, Neto is a name that we're hearing quite a bit of, and as you said, Todd, that the gentleman from France who I'm not familiar with. And I think if you bring in more options on the wing, you can have Sonny spend a little bit more time competing through the middle with Richarlison, right? I don't think that's a horrible thing. We saw Decky prove to be quite serviceable as a false 9 up the middle, right? So there's options we're going to have. And if we don't end up bringing in a striker, I don't think it's the end of the world. But I really think that winger is where we're going to have to focus the primary portion of our attention, right? Who can play as a 10, also play on the wing is somebody that we're hearing. So I think ultimately what I'm getting at is we're going to invest more out wide up top and probably stick with what we have through the middle, which will ruffle a few feathers, but I think it's a perfectly good option. And then when you look at the 2 guys we've already brought in, I think they're both going to compete in the midfield, and I think that shores up a lot of the need that you have through the middle. For the same reason I said earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if another right back pops into the mix, right, as somebody who could maybe compete and be there in the future. But ultimately, I think after a couple more signings up top, things are going to slow down, and there won't be a ton of moving and shaking.
I'm actually surprised that didn't last much longer. I liked it. I'm in favor.
That speaks to the depth that we've built, Andrew. Tell you what.
No question. For those watching on the YouTube page, I kind of kicked back in my seat there and just let Scott cook. And I'm going to jump back in here now, and we'll kind of move on from some of the transfer stuff until a lot of it happens. We'll be back over the next few weeks to cover it, but I think we've kind of covered a lot of what the rumors are and what they could be. I want to do some. I want to leave us time at the back end of this pod to discuss a lot of the selfish stuff that we want to discuss about the US and all those kinds of things. So let's do a few quick hitters before we move on to that stuff. New away kit was released since we last talked. We've seen it. Everybody kind of knew what it looked like. And do we have any hot takes on the new away kit? Because I kind of do have a hot take on the new away kit, and I want to hear if anyone else does.
Well, I mean, first off, for those playing at home that aren't quite sure yet, the away kit is the light blue one with the vertical stripes. It kind of looks like the downstairs bathroom at your aunt's house. And there we go, Andrew, for those of us playing at home. Fantastic. For those just listening, Andrew was nice enough to bring up a photo of it. So, yeah, no, I mean, obviously I ordered mine. It'll be here next week. But DHgate is the jam. Just saying. No, other than that, I mean, I hate the collar. That's the only thing for me is I hate the collar. I'm a guy who enjoys symmetry, and this kit specifically just spits in the eye of symmetry, and that bothers me a little bit. But we'll see. I also hate the yellow, like flashing, like caution stripes on the arms. Like, people aren't going to see you as you're walking around the hallway. I don't know, man.
There's got to be a warning sign for when Christian Romero is flying in for a tackle. You need
I'll tell you
the
what,
caution light.
putting it on the shorts makes sense, right? But anyway, what do you think, Kaz?
I've just been over here silently laughing because you went through all the things wrong with it, and yet it's in the mail on its way to you. So
that's where I was too. That's where I was going to go.
Listen. A gentleman never tells, but there's a certain website that we have a relationship. It's treated me well so far. Use at your own risk, and that's where we're at. I haven't paid the club. I only pay, and this is a personal rule for our listeners. I think you guys know this. I've already told you this, but I pay the club for one kit a year, and then I figure out whether or not I want to find my other kits elsewhere. But pay the club for one a year. The green one this year, despite the fact that somebody forgot what direction the Nike sign goes, is the kit that I will be paying the club for, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be my move too. Obviously, we haven't seen like the official release of that one yet, so TBD. But I guess if I had a hot take about this one, it would be that I like it more than the home kit, surprisingly. I agree with Todd. I love symmetry, but I also I hate when things are boring. And to me, the home kit is still just too boring for me to justify adding it to my, already too large Tottenham kit collection. So, but I think this new one actually looks better on the players than I expected it to. Like the color, okay, that picture that Andrew just popped up for the YouTube, it's not as vibrant as it actually looks, in the flesh or, well, in professionally done photography by the club. So I think it turned out okay. I don't hate it. I'll probably like it when I see the players, debuting it in the preseason. But yeah, I think I'm more excited to see the third kit still.
My only take on the away kit is that I think it's going to be my favorite of the three that we have this year, because partially because I just love that shade of blue, whatever shade that is, the multiple shades combined. I love them all, and I think they go really well together. It also just has a very, and I know the club kind of did a little bit of leaning into the retro-ness of it in their promotion, but it has a very 70s or 80s retro feel to it. Maybe even early 90s. Like it, I dig it. I'm definitely, and I am not someone who enjoys a centralized badge. I like a badge on the left side closest to the heart, but I fucking dig this kit. It's really cool. I'm definitely going to get one. The third kit to me also looks funky, but Todd, to your point, that check mark is really wigging me out. The swoosh is not swooshing for me. And the home kit, I'm fine with the home kit. It's just like you guys have said, it's a home kit. It's a white home kit. I'm fine with blue sleeves, whatever. But this blue stripy, whatever you want to call it, that light blue vibe is where I'm at. I'm someone, if you're watching on YouTube, again, I'm wearing a light blue shirt today. That's kind of where I live in terms of my color palette. I am a gray, light blue, black type of person. So that's what I wear. And this kit fits my color palette, in my opinion. That's why I'm a big fan of it. So I'm not, at least we don't have Dakota on the pod today to give us his kit takes. We can all kind of have agreeable kit takes. So, that's I guess where we're going to live.
Yeah. And for clarity, those who may not remember, Dakota, whom we love dearly, has notoriously terrible kit taste, like terrible, like so much so that I believe his favorite Tottenham kit of the last few years is the scuba kit. And that'll tell you all the things you need to know.
No, I do think that Andrew might be bleeding into Dakota territory with his away kit take, though. I do have to say that, because I think that thing.
First of all, how dare you?
Terrible.
How dare you?
Someone had to say it.
And another thing. No, honestly, Andrew, until you see the collar in person, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, I have not examined the collar too close. I'm just looking color palette.
When I saw the collar in person, because obviously it's a Nike template, so there's other shirts that are cut this way as well. When I saw the Nike collar, like for the first time, I thought it was a misprint. I thought someone had made a mistake. Like that's how
it's a weird collar. It's a weird collar. Yeah, just an example of Nike just trying to do too much. For those who are watching, I've got on a Dynamo kit from I think 2019, 20 maybe. I'm not quite sure, but it's Adidas and is one of my favorite kits that I own. It's simple, it's clean. It has the orange ingredients. I just don't understand why Spurs have such a hard time putting kits out that aren't atrocious. And we can put it on Nike, but I don't know. I'll blame
It's
the
on
club
Nike.
for all of its problems.
I'm fine with that. And you know what? Now that Dakota is spending some of his time in Oregon, we can blame him for that as well, because that's where Nike is headquartered.
True.
So we're just going to throw all of this on. It's all Dakota's fault.
This is true, but also to be fair, the Portland Timbers kits are Adidas and they're religiously epic. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they're Adidas. Like
Mhm.
you just made my point for me. This is a Nike problem.
Did Dakota move to take a job with Nike as like a PR person just to talk well of their kits? And he's just not telling us any of this, right?
He's actually coming eventually.
He's actually standing outside of Nike headquarters in the scuba kit, begging for a job, I think, or something.
Right now.
That might be
just
what
clapping.
Let's leave Dakota. Let's leave Dakota alone. Poor guy. I feel
we love you, Dak.
Well, not that bad, but only a little bit bad. Guys, today marks 1 year since Spurs women hired Robert Villaham to be their head coach. 1 year anniversary of that. There's really, I mean, look, we're still a ways away from the WSL season kicking off. It's not until September. Preseason won't be for a while. A lot of the players, obviously on the women's side, Olympics is a little bit more of a big deal than on the men's side. So there's a lot of the players are gearing up for that tournament. But I guess the only real big news on the Spurs women's side of things is that Amanda Nilden, her loan was made permanent by the club not too long ago. Caroline, do we have any like big hot take other than thumbs up? Because I think this is a perfectly reasonable move for the club to have made.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I would have been upset if it didn't happen, honestly, because she's just fit in pretty seamlessly. And, I think she really represents, the kind of more attacking fullback that we're looking for. She also takes a great penalty, so that's a plus. And she just seems really happy to be, staying at Tottenham, from all of her like interviews when she officially signed. I think she's just a great fit, like playing wise and culture wise. So yeah, very happy.
Yeah, I don't really have any big grand hot take other than what you just said. Like it's another solid move by the club, and keep them coming. I mean, obviously a lot of the, like on the men's side, because of international football in the summer and the drawn out nature of it, a lot of moves are going to come late, but this was one that they were able to get over the line, a few weeks ago, and we just hadn't had a chance to touch on it on the pod. So I'm glad we could. Scott, did you have something else to offer?
Just with Robert, I think it's easy to overlook what a wonderful job he did, because nothing of note happened. We got to a final, right? But sometimes it's hard to paint a season where you don't win anything as like this crazy successful season. But I really think it was with Robert. The team put out a tweet, so this is not anything I dig up, right? It's right there on Twitter. But a couple of the stats from his first season: highest win rate of any Spurs manager in the WSL, and the second highest points tally that we've secured in the WSL, which I was actually kind of surprised by. I would have guessed maybe the highest points tally we'd ever recorded, but it was the second. And then obviously the first ever North London Derby win, getting to the FA Cup final, and 10 points won from losing positions, which when you talk about a season that's shorter than a Premier League season, right, that those points matter too. So he did a fantastic job, and I think his project is going faster than Ange's project on the other side of the club for sure, and I think that will continue to show next season on the women's side. Like you guys have already talked about, we brought Nilden in permanently, and I think that gives him more confidence in what his squad's going to look like. It's not like a shiny new signing, but from a manager's perspective, it's just that that again, that belief that your foundation is building right, and you'll have the pieces that you need and expect to have. So I think we'll see, a few signings come in the near future. I wish that we were going to be bringing Clinton in on a permanent deal like we have with Amanda, right? And we can still hope until the window closes. But ultimately, I think a couple more pieces will start rolling in, and Robert will continue to cook for sure.
The other,
Let
go
me
ahead,
just,
Caroline.
Andrew, if you'll allow me, because I think, speaking of Grace and Manchester United, I think to me so far, it's been encouraging to see kind of the way the club has responded to, like Scott said, the project kind of being ahead of schedule. Because I feel like we've seen, particularly with the way they got behind, the push for getting fans to the final and sort of, boosting the women's team's profile around that event. I think that has been good. And also, it doesn't seem like Robert is being thwarted, shall we say, in any of his sort of like transfer requests so far. Like, we know he's been heavily involved in all the recruitment, and it feels like we're building the team that he wants. And it really is a stark contrast to United, who, I don't know if y'all have kept up with all of that news that's been coming out around their club and their women's team, but it's just like a complete travesty. It's horrible, honestly. And it was interesting because I was just listening to Kristen Press and Tobin Heath's podcast the other day, where they talked about, the brief time that they spent at United, sort of during like the pandemic sort of period. And, they said that they spent quite a lot of that season at the top of the table. And as a team, they kind of decided they were going to change their goals that they had, previously set out, and they were going to try to go for it. And when Casey Stoney went to, the board at United and said, can you, support me in this? They basically were like, no, you're too far ahead of schedule. This is a 5-year plan. They didn't want to put any more investment into it. So, and, it's still to be determined, like, how much investment we see this summer. But I think the signs are there that they really are trying to capitalize on this unexpected momentum that we've had from bringing Robert in and some of the players who have joined as well. So I'm excited to see, what else happens in this transfer window for the women's team.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was thinking about this the last time we recorded, and we ran out of time or moved on or something, but for a fraction of what we've paid as absolute waste amounts of money on players on the men's side, you could totally revamp the squad from top to bottom on the women's side, right? And I don't understand how any of it works when it comes to return on investment and all of that, right? Money talks in the end, but ultimately, I really hope that we end up being one of those clubs who one of the first clubs to really put some serious money into the women's team. And I know clubs are, for sure, right? But it's all relative to the market, right? But at some point, somebody's going to break the market, like what happened with Neymar and PSG, right? So that'll happen on the women's side eventually. And as much as I would hate to compare us to anything related to PSG, my point is I would like to see us be the club that breaks the women's transfer world, right? And sees the club reap the benefits of that before others do. And again, I don't know the finer details, but it just needs to happen. And I'll be frustrated the longer I see that type of thing not happen, right? Because again, how many times have we gone and wasted $10 million, $20 million, $65 million? Take $5 million and put it into the women's squad, right? And see what happens. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see how things take shape for sure as the women's game grows and gains popularity and all of that.
And I guess, like, somewhat related to Spurs women, I'm going to like finagle this into the podcast because it's, again, partially selfish on our part as we want to discuss this, but former Spurs striker Alex Morgan is not going to be with the U.S. women's national team for the Olympics. She was left off the squad under new manager Emma Hayes. I guess there's not really a hot take I have on this other than that sounds about right. Alex Morgan has been through a lot over the last handful of seasons between injuries and just being out of form in general. But Caroline, I know you had a lot on this as well. Just kind of a little bit of sadness because it's just a transitional phase for this club, but also just I think there's more controversy over this than I almost expected from the general like U.S. women's team national team fan base.
Yeah, I think the controversy is just that she has been like the literal face of the team for so many years. And obviously, she's been an important leader in the squad too. And I think that's something you always have to think about with the Olympic squad because it is so limited in terms of space, just the 18-player roster. It can be difficult to have enough of that like experienced leadership. And I think you see that in the squad that actually got selected. Like we do have a much younger roster than we've seen for many of the recent tournaments. So that's going to be really interesting to see who does step up and kind of fill that void of leadership. But, like you said, as sad as it is, I think it's probably the right decision in terms of form because, I'm a huge Alex Morgan fan. I'm a Wave fan. It's not been pretty recently, and then that kind of goes across the board for the whole club. But yeah, she especially, she's just not been scoring, and you can't really afford to take a player who might need some time to ramp up in a tournament that's so short and truncated, even just in terms of like the turnaround between games. And we have so many good forwards in the US pool. Like we're going to be absolutely fine. On the field, like I said, I think to me, it's more so like the off the field stuff that could be like missing from her not making the roster. And it's just sad for her personally, because I know she really would have, loved to be at this tournament, but it's just, we're in a time of transition and, with the new manager, Emma Hayes, this was her judgment call to make. So I think we kind of have to back her in that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that this is, you liken this to James Madison not being selected for the Euro squad. Like he didn't get selected because he wasn't in good enough form to get selected. So there you go. The tough piece here is that Alex Morgan is one of the last and most important kind of linchpins to the legacy of U.S. women's soccer on that current squad from their time of true dominance and greatness. And, as you look to transition into this new era under Emma Hayes, that continuity is lost a little bit, leaving someone like Alex off the roster. But it'll be interesting to see how, you kind of get that addition by subtraction, like how this team galvanizes and closes the gap around the hole that is Alex Morgan not being there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think, as Caroline said, if this is a 23 woman roster, she's probably the 23rd name that gets put on that roster, right? The 23rd player rarely plays. They're just there for whatever other reasons, and in this case, it would be her leadership, right? At the same time, and I'll also say 18 players is just insane. Like you don't even have a backup for every position. It's absolutely insane. It's wild, and I kind of like it. It's a bit crazy, right? Yeah, it's just wild to me. Anyways, she'd be the 23rd name. At the same time, we have a new manager, and she is going to have to work very hard to implement and build things her way. And sometimes having those remnants of the old regime can maybe make that a little more challenging. And not that Alex would ever be a problem, right? But I think even subconsciously, not bringing her, even if it's a toss up in this sense, maybe makes sense for more reasons other than just form too. Because again, Emma's got a tough job ahead of her. The game is so much more competitive than it was when Alex was coming into the fold, right? It just is. And we have a fantastic manager, but there's a lot of good teams across Europe, right? And outside of Europe as well, we're seeing everybody in South America really start to perform. Australia is always going to perform, right? We're seeing Japan, of course, is always going to perform. Korea is starting to. So it's going to be a very competitive landscape. And I think Emma Hayes came in and did exactly what she needed to do to go and give herself the best chance to win the Olympics, which she frankly needs to do, right? So I wasn't surprised by it at all, but I'm definitely bumming for Alex.
I think the point you make there, Scott, is kind of where I am. The world of women's football has been dominated by the United States for so long from an international standpoint, and we've seen over the last handful of seasons that start to slip. And part of the reason is because of players like Alex Morgan, Abby Wambach, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, like all of these players aging out of the program and kind of like their careers ending. Not that Alex Morgan's career is over, but she's certainly she's in the October, November of her career, you would think at this point. And that's kind of like why Emma Hayes has been brought in. Not only is it helpful for Chelsea not to have her anymore from a Spurs standpoint, as I try to tie everything back, but it's helpful for the US because they needed this kind of swift kick in the ass, and they probably needed this churn at the last World Cup as well. It's why this happened now, because of the performance at the last World Cup, but getting it done now and using this churn to turn over the roster and make it younger, there's going to be an experience, there's going to be growing pains, but the world is coming. Spain just won the World Cup. You rattled off a number of other nations there that are not only on the way, they're there, they're here. They've met the US where they have been for so many years, going back to the 99ers. So this is something that has needed to happen for a while. And yeah, it's like, it's one of those hard to say goodbye situations, but it was a completely necessary move. And I think, like I said, to start this conversation, the only part that surprised me was that there was so much consternation about a player like Alex Morgan, who her legacy in this team is secure. Like there's no, just like Abby Wambach, just like, a number of the other players I rattled off, Mia Hamm, whoever else you want to go back into the history of this team, like her legacy is secure. This does not diminish her legacy whatsoever. It's just,
she has 2 Olympic gold medals.
Exactly. It's been time. Like this is kind of where we are. So it sucks, but that's just kind of the way it goes.
And the last thing I'll say is Swanson, Smith, and Robnett are going to absolutely cook up top. I think they're gonna eat the Olympics alive, those three up top together. Agreed. And I cannot fucking wait for that. It's gonna be awesome.
Here's the other thing I'll say about the US women. I think it's actually a great thing that they are not the top dog anymore, because you're seeing the fact that you're seeing the rest of the world catch up means that women's football is growing across the world. And I just think that that's a really important part of this that doesn't really, I think that doesn't get talked about enough, is that we have a very nationalistic American perspective on this, obviously the four of us being Americans, but even other Americans who look at the US women's national team as the beacon, because they have been for so long. I think a lot of people are upset by the fact that they didn't win the World Cup, and perhaps you should be, but also recognize that the fact that Spain did win it is a cool thing, because it means the game is growing on the women's side across the globe. And that's just a really, really positive thing. On the men's side of things, let's dig into this. The men obviously got grouped at the Copa, and we'll touch on the Copa and the Euro. Obviously, the semifinals this week, the final a week from today for both of those tournaments. But when it comes to the men, this is chaos. Greg Berhalter is still somehow, as I'm going to check Twitter just to make sure. Yes, Greg Berhalter still in charge of the U.S. men's national team somehow. We don't expect that to be the case for very much longer, but do you guys, other than just saying like the easy thing, which would be like appoint Jurgen Klopp and move on?
Well, he was on vacation this week. It makes total sense to me that, they waited because Jurgen has to get back from vacation. He said he was tired. He needed some time off. Like, this is totally fine. I don't understand what we're talking about.
What did you make of Jurgen Klopp really, really hardcore celebrating the 4th of July this past week on social media and really waving the American flag? What did you make of that, Todd?
I'm made of that. If you double Greg Berhalter's salary and give it to Jurgen Klopp, he's going to be red, white, and blueing your socks off here in just a minute. Like, I'm telling you, man, like as much as here, and I'll tell you why. So much of this is hyperbole, right? Like this is what I want to have happen and whatever. And there's a much more nationalistic name that is being bantered about right now that none of our listeners have ever fucking heard of. And there's a good reason why I'm grumpy about it. Scott will come on to it later. But what I'm telling you right now is that the reason why this matters so much that it happened when it did is because it happened on American soil. It happened while the whole fucking world was watching because we're ramping up to a World Cup. And it happened while Jesse Marsch is taking Canada to a semifinal where he's going to play Messi, which is honestly every American advertiser's wet soccer dream. And so the fact that all of this shit happened in one tournament has the national American sports media up in arms about how shit Greg Berhalter is and how badly this needs to get fixed. And because of that, I think that alone is the reason why a guy like Jurgen Klopp can come out of nowhere and wind up as our manager going into a World Cup. Because again, every soccer advertiser's wet dream is a U.S. World Cup with a huge name coach and all of these people playing Messi they're all going to give me their advertising dollars. Like it is so cookie cutter by the book, the way that they want it to play out. I have a really hard time figuring out how it's not going to happen.
I'm just really glad that we've earned the explicit tag today by you using the phrase wet dream multiple times, as well as somehow throwing the word Messi in there, which I know is not related, but somehow also related. Scott, what's your plan?
Actually, the third time that you just used it that put us over the edge. So I'm gonna hang that squarely on your shoulders, Captain.
That's fine too. Scott, how do you fix this? Do you just fucking hire Jurgen Klopp and call it a day? Does that make the U.S. the favorite to win the 2026 World Cup that'll be held here in the States or not?
Yeah, on that note, I don't think we'll go and get anybody at Klopp's level because I don't believe in the federation. But a move like that would be the only way that all of this would be okay. We've talked about it in the group chat. You grow from massive failures in life, right? The same can be said of the soccer federation if they choose to follow that path, right? This could be the straw that broke the camel's back and got them to go out and do something big, right? We had the chance, and I'll get to that in a second, right? But it could be our opportunity. Do I think we'll take it? No. I think the federation absolutely fumbled in a way that very few federations have ever fumbled in the history of international soccer. You have two cycles. What'd you say?
I said I hate how right you are right now. Like this is
I know, man. And it really hurts. You look at the first cycle. First of all, very few people get two cycles, right? And the cycle's World Cup to World Cup. You look at the first cycle that saw us lead up to the World Cup and then the Copa right after it, right? And then you have the cycle from Qatar through the U.S. hosting the World Cup. So both of these two cycles that Greg Berhalter's had culminated in a massive international tournament, one of them being the World Cup on home soil. You give it to a guy, both of them, to a guy who has really done nothing other than get to a MLS Cup final. But his win rate in Major League Soccer is 38%, right? He's done absolutely nothing. Did okay in the first cycle, and I think I say that because
two Nations Leagues, you can't take it away from him.
100%. He beat Mexico in two finals.
Time out. This is where I'm going to put the timeout squarely on. We need as the United States, as a quote unquote footballing nation, to stop hanging our hat on the Nations League wins over Mexico. One, because they're kind of made up, and two, because Mexico is super, super down.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say.
Mexico,
but they weren't when they happened. It's really easy to take that position now. And I'm not saying that they were. Hold on a second. I'm not saying that they weren't at their peak, because they weren't at their peak. And I get that. But to say that they're a shadow of themselves as they are now, at the time when we beat them, that's not true. The mystique still existed. Okay. 2-0 is still something that is talked about. If you looked at the FIFA rankings, they back up exactly what I'm saying. Hold on.
Fuck the FIFA rankings, but that's the problem. The problem is that 2-0 does have a mystique, and it should not anymore.
You can only beat the rival in front of you, is my point. And so, yes, we're in CONCACAF right now, and it's like, what, you trying to start some shit with Cuba, bro? You trying to get wily with Canada and have folks get all excited about that rivalry? Come on, dude, come on. No, it's always been Mexico here. So we got to go get the big dog, and we got to beat them up and make us feel really good about that. That's what you have to do as the coach of a U.S. national team in order to get even a seat at the table to have a conversation about being better, right? Or being at a world-class level. So we're not there yet. And the reason why is because we haven't had a coach that has made the strides that our players have respectively. And there's been weird MLS contributions required in the team selection and all sorts of silly shit that comes from the federation that shouldn't. And what I'm saying is that when you have someone like Greg that's going to play a faux expansive type of football, he wants to widen the pitch, but he doesn't fucking do anything with it. It's really weird. I don't like it. It's not utilizing the players the best that they can. And then you have a federation that's making you bring people that shouldn't be on the team. It's really difficult to have a legitimate seat at the table in conversation about top class football. Now, if you bring in somebody like Jurgen Klopp, he's not going to take bullshit from the people very long when it comes to, you got to bring this MLS guy and that MLS guy. So
that's why he'll never get hired.
Well, and this is the point, is that what Andrew is saying and what I'm postulating here is that I think there's an opportunity for that watershed moment to have occurred with how badly we shit the bed in front of absolutely everybody in the soccer world this time around. This tournament was a joke. The playing pitches were a joke. The refereeing was a joke. And we played like shit. So that in mind, we got a World Cup coming up. What are we going to do to get better and different and more relevant, Andrew? Hire Jurgen Klopp.
Caroline, jump in here. You had a thought, I know.
Well, I just was going to interject when we had mentioned the Nations League wins that I do think those were important in terms of the fan base, like buying into this squad, like the current squad. I know for me personally, I wouldn't even call myself a U.S. men's national team fan before sort of this era. So I do think it's kind of important in that sense. But the problem is that was the moment when the federation should have had that moment of, we have to take the next step. And like, obviously we all know Berhalter is not the manager who's going to take the team to the next level. Like we've known that for a long time now. It was very apparent, the first time he left the team, and I just can't believe that they, conducted the search and decided that he was the best option to bring back. I feel like we really lost a lot of possible momentum, with that decision. So
how do you right or wrong? Jurgen Klopp. It's very simple.
So here's the thing, Caroline. Your point is exactly right. Here's where the Nations League thing, I think it did rejuvenate a fan base, because it kind of got to relearn a little bit who these players are, and this is where I'm gonna I don't want this to be mistaken by anyone as a pro Greg Berhalter take, because I've always been as anti Greg Berhalter as anyone can be. However, what the Nations League did, I think, for the fan base, Caroline, is it introduced the fan base to these newer-ish players, this new era of players, many of whom are playing in Europe, which is a good thing. It's the first time that a U.S. men's national team has had this many players playing at big teams in Europe. Again, a positive thing. However, we've also got to recognize what those players' roles are on those teams. And we also have to recognize that these players, while good and some of the best that the U.S. has had in many years are not good enough. The players are not good enough.
I'm going to shit all over the steak. Please finish.
Good. Let me cook for a second though. These players are the biggest part of the problem for the US. The manager is a big part of the problem. The players are a bigger part of the problem. Your Weston McKennies, your Gio Reynas, and yes, your Christian Pulisics are not good enough to be any kind of a favorite for anything other than a Nations League in which you need to win 2 matches, a semifinal and a final, one of which is against Mexico, a very down Mexico. So that to me has gotten people way too hyped because we have all these players in Europe. Oh, Weston McKennie's playing here and Christian Pulisic's playing here. And, name them all. Serginho Dest, who hasn't even been seen because of injury. Like all of these other players are playing, but what are they doing in Europe? They are squad players. They are the equivalent of not much. It's not like they're starting and
Caroline,
banging in goals day in and day out. Get me. Go ahead. Get me.
Well, I might agree with you that they're not good enough to win a World Cup in 2026 because I still don't think that's realistic. I know there are a lot of US fans who do think it's possible. However, it should be a good enough squad to beat Panama in the Copa America.
No,
And
you're
that's where I think the
1,000,000%
issue
right.
is. Like Greg Berhalter has not been getting the most out of these players. Like we know there's only so much they can give. Like I do agree with that, but he's not even getting that. So
and look, let's really call a spade here a spade. Tim Weah is the reason that this team was ejected so easily from the Copa. Like Tim Weah's red card in that match is a massive part of the reason that this club lost in the way that it did and got grouped. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. That's not a Greg Berhalter issue. That's a Tim Weah being an idiot issue.
We should be able to beat Panama with 10 people on the field.
And
we really should.
Like his moment of madness. Like, do we not think there's a managerial issue that's
Listen, you're not going to get me to disagree that Greg Berhalter is an issue, but my other issue is the players aren't good enough.
I could not possibly disagree with you more. I think that there is one specific area where we've been lacking, and that has been at the striker position, the finishing in the striker position. Now we have Flo Balogun there. And to be honest with you, you can't argue with the stats that he's putting up in the French league. Now, I regularly shit on the French league as a farmers league, and it absolutely is. But when you're scoring 20 goals a season in Europe in one of the first leagues, like you got to say what it is. 20 goals a season is 20 goals in a season. French league's still shit. But these guys are winning titles, Andrew, and that's the difference maker. That's the reason why I view this as the golden generation. As you say, oh, they're bit part players, they're role players. That's dog shit. Christian Pulisic led AC Milan last year. I'm just saying. Christian Pulisic was underutilized when he was at Chelsea, and they still won all the trophies. And I'm not going to talk about it because gross. But it happened, and we can't say anything about that.
Gio Reynas up for player of the year.
Won trophies in as played and won trophies in Germany. He won the Pope Ball, if I'm not mistaken, the German Cup, right? And you're looking at this going, okay, so and you got guys like Yunus Musa who are starting in Spain and then starting in Italy. You got like these aren't like bit players that are getting a little bit, dude. Even fucking Pepe. And your guy Serginho Dest that you just decided to blow off, even though he blew up an ACL in the middle of an Eredivisie winning season for PSV. Like these guys are contributing in these leagues in Europe in ways that I don't think that you gave proper respect to. There's two big issues for the U.S., and I'll tell you exactly what they are. We have no depth at striker. Pepe can't seem to score an international goal to save his fucking life, and Josh Sargent and all the other things that we've discussed. Flo Balogun gets hurt. Timothy Weah can't come on the inside and score the way that he does, in Europe. We have issues up front. The second thing is Matt Turner is fucking terrible. He's fucking terrible. And we find ourselves going, oh, he made 7 saves. They were dog shit saves. They may have may as well rolled it to him. My issue is when we face top tier talent, our center backs get spun and Matt Turner gets exposed. And that's a coaching issue from my perspective, because you're looking at it going, if this is the best we got to figure out a way to give this guy more cover, and he's not getting it. I think you can have somebody like Jurgen Klopp use the athleticism of American players to put his press into full effect at the international level in a way that we haven't seen before, will get people really galvanized and juiced up about watching fast front foot football from the U.S. at the World Cup in 2026. All of this shit makes a ton of sense if you zoom out and look at it from, we're trying to maximize how much money we can make and how much exposure we can get off of this upcoming World Cup as a U.S. federation, which I really think they are. Like, if you're looking at it, now is the time when you have to pull the trigger. If you give me that name that Scotty's about to bring up, you can directly go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of see what Andrew's saying, but I'm going to just twist it a little bit and say that from a talent perspective, these guys are very, very talented footballers and should be able to go win tournaments. Any footballer at that level that doesn't believe they can go win the Copa America, get the fuck out of here. Like, why are you a professional athlete at that point, right? So they should believe.
Wait a second, Scott. Who are they better than in the Copa? They're not better than Argentina.
Dude, Canada's in a
They're not better
semifinal.
than.
Like,
No.
Canada's.
I agree with Scott. They should have made
Canada
all you have
Canada
to
is
do
better
is
at
get to a
soccer than the United
semifinal.
States right now.
No, in this
They
tournament. Get the fuck out of here, dude. It's in this tournament. You just have to say in this tournament. This tournament was poorly managed, and so you can look at that
on
and
a
say
new
Canada's
manager
had a better
bounce.
tournament.
Like,
when you look over the last World Cup, the last Nations League,
That's a good point, Scott. The new manager bounce for Canada.
They have a new manager bounce. Canada's not better than us. But what these guys don't have that a group like Clint Dempsey's team had is absolute heart and passion and the belief that you can go win games. They beat Spain 2-0. I watched it. Right? Tim Howard, Charlie Davies, that dude's a fucking mentality beast, right? Like, we don't have those types of guys anymore. If these guys had that mentality, we could go win the Copa America. And we need a better manager too, for sure. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I do understand where you're coming from in a sense that, like, it is on the players as well. But Greg Berhalter, and I was in Kansas City, tactically inept. He has no clue how to change a game with his tactics at all. Against Uruguay, we came out and actually looked good tactically at first, right? We were looking to get the ball long, and then we were pressing the shit out of them once we did it, right? We did not try to play out the back. I was worried we may try to do that. I was also worried that we may sit back and absorb pressure. They'll eat us fucking alive in my head if we do that, right? Is what I'm thinking leading up to the game. But the tactics were right. Get it long and press the shit out of them because their defense is not as good as the rest of their team. But 40 minutes later, Uruguay figures that out, and they stop allowing the long ball to happen, and it all fell apart, and Greg had no idea how to change, right? He spent an entire week working on the plan A and didn't know what to do as soon as it stopped working. And guys at his level are just never going to be able to do that and in that type of international tournament, right? That's why bigger names are paid more and manage at bigger clubs, because they understand how to change a game tactically during that match, right? So until we get somebody like that, I just think we're in a lot of trouble. And I don't think we have the type of manager in Berhalter or whomever that will put the fear of God into these guys. For example, Serginho Dest red card. I was watching that on a beach in Hawaii, fuming. Like, what in the fucking world was he thinking, right? No problem. Like, shake it off, kid, is the Berhalter vibe that I get, right? And then you look at Tim Weah. He did cost this team, but we should be able to beat Panama with 10 men, and we should be able to get a better result against Uruguay with everything on the line, right? As soon as Panama concedes and it's 1-1, Berhalter tells the team, he literally yelled to the team, 1-1, like, dude, just let them fucking focus on their game right now, right? And moments later, we can see it. It's a lack of mentality from the manager, a lack of mentality from the players. And as Todd has alluded to, all the grumblings are that Cherundolo is going to get the job when they sack Berhalter. That's what it sounds like. Classic United States Soccer Federation. We're going to get another MLS, Steve Cherundolo. We're going to get who manages LAFC, right? And it's going to be another yes man for the federation, a guy who's done okay, right? He spent a lot of time in Hanover. I think he's the mayor of Hanover, right? and I think he was an assistant there for a while. So he's got good experience in Germany, but I just don't think he's done anything to make me feel that he's going to do anything different than Berhalter. So don't be surprised when it's announced that Berhalter's sacked and Cherundolo is taken over, and we're going to see the U.S., back to what I was saying earlier, continue to walk down the path of these failed cycles. Like I was saying, Berhalter's first cycle was okay. You get a Gold Cup against Mexico, you get a Nations League against Mexico. It was BJ that came in and got the second Nations League, and then BJ faltered in the Gold Cup, right? But BJ did a good job. Berhalter comes in, you get smoked by Germany in the first match that he's back. I think you beat Ghana after that in a friendly. And then you lose to Trinidad in the build-up to the Gold Cup, right? Thank God you still get in. But you go down to Trinidad and you lose. You don't win the Gold Cup, right? Go to the World Cup, do okay. Come back on your home fucking soil and get absolutely grouped. Like, he has done absolutely zero things that lead to him keeping the job, which is why he's going to get sacked. But Cherundolo is going to come in and it's going to be the same exact thing. And then we're going to go into the World Cup on our home soil and probably get grouped again. When we had an opportunity to, I don't know if you guys know this, you probably do, but we passed on Julian Lopetegui, who really wanted the job, and we hired Berhalter instead. I haven't even I'm ranting, sorry. But we didn't even talk about the fact that when they departed from Berhalter after the bullshit that happened after the World Cup, you pay millions to this search firm to do all this data and pour all this research into a decision.
That's been a point that's been made, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's okay. So, yeah, and then you rehire Berhalter, right? You say no thanks to Lopetegui. You say no thanks to Jesse Marsch, who's now taking Canada to a semifinal, right? And Jesse Marsch, on the last episode he did of his podcast with Charlie Davies, and I can't think of the name of it. Sorry, Jesse. I'm sure you're listening, but I can't think of the name of your pod. But in the last episode he did before he left for Canada, he came out and said the Federation pissed him off when they looked past him and hired Berhalter again, right? So some of what he's doing at Canada, I think, is a big fuck you to United States soccer. And frankly, I'd be feeling the same way if I were him after what I just seen with Berhalter.
At least we denied Canada from winning another Stanley Cup. We've got that going for us. Caroline, jump in.
Okay.
You had one more point you wanted to make, and then we'll wrap this conversation up.
Yeah, but we gave the Stanley Cup to Florida. I don't know if that's better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fair point. Well, for me, the crucial thing is just that as we were having this discussion, I was furtively looking up the ages of, the sort of core of the U.S. men's national team squad. They are not really that old. Like, all of the kind of key players are 25 or younger, with the exception of Matt Turner. But I think we all agree shouldn't be a key player. So
Matt Turner's ass.
Yeah, there's a real opportunity if they can get in a manager. And I'm not saying it has to be Jurgen Klopp, but someone who's a serious manager. And I don't mean any disrespect to Cherundolo. I liked him as a player, but I think it's got to be someone who's going to, like, as cheesy as this sounds, set boundaries with the players, not have it be such a, like, I don't know. It felt like with Greg, he had convinced them to kind of be on his side, and we don't need that. We need a manager who's going to actually, like, bring some discipline to the team, some focus, because I think they do have potential. Like, I said, I just think we're not going to be able to get to the point where we can win the World Cup just because of the level of some of the other teams in the world, but we should be consistently, dominating CONCACAF competitions with these players. Like, they are capable of that for sure.
Here's the other point that I don't think has been made very often. It's going to be a real detriment that this club is not going to have to qualify for the World Cup. They're just going to get to waltz in. That's going to hurt them, I think, massively, because they're not going to have to go down to Trinidad and win a game on a rain-soaked field in 98-degree heat. They're not going to have that pressure.
Tell me how that's bad.
Well, they're not going to have to go through the process of qualifying for this World Cup because they're automatically in it.
I didn't mishear you. I'm trying to figure out how that's bad.
Because they won't be challenged.
They won't be challenged.
How is that bad? Like, we fail in the lead up to every major tournament when we have one of these challenges. We did it before this tournament. We got smoked. We got absolutely smoked.
How do you get better at something, Todd? You challenge yourself to do it.
No.
But then how do we deserve to be there, if
This
we haven't
is my
actually
whole
earned it?
point. Is I think this is actually going to work in our favor because we're going to have a coaching change, which means we're going to have to take a second and get our shit together, doing something completely different, hopefully. And so because of that, it's going to be beneficial that we don't need to actually prove anything to anybody until we get to the World Cup.
And by the way, the idea that this team has to hire an American to manage it is completely asinine, because I've seen.
Yeah,
that.
we're just not a soccer nation. Yeah,
No,
we're working hard to be one.
And this is
But we've been
why,
working hard for how many years? That's the point.
Actually, we're really not working that hard because Berhalter is currently the manager.
And this is what I'm talking about. And I'm obviously like tongue in cheek about the Chirangolo thing, but like what I'm talking about here is that you can't hire an MLS coach and expect to compete in a major world.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, just because it's so tied in with U.S. soccer, like we all know this, it's an open secret. So
U.S. soccer is a big. I don't really want to use this term, but it's a circular thing. I'll just leave it there. It's a circular motion. There's a circular process here.
Essentially,
somebody's on in that process, Andrew.
We're gonna leave it there. We've already gone. We've already gone in a number of places that I didn't intend fully to go.
Honestly, though, somebody at the top of U.S. soccer believes that the best route forward is to focus on the game at home instead of tapping into anything external to get the federation where it needs to be, and that's just not correct. We're not stable enough as a footballing nation yet. We're just not there, and until I think we get past that, that false hope that we have that we can get ourselves there, the homegrown route it's going to be really ugly. It's a bummer because, like Todd said,
false hope's the right term, though. That's the right term. You just used it. It's false hope.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
And like Todd said, if you come in and you hire somebody like Jurgen Klopp, who all it takes is money. I think one of the issues that we maybe run into too at times is, and I think I have to scream this in extremely bold letters, that I am a huge favor of this rule being in place, but it maybe does impact. And that's the men's and women's coaches have to be paid the same. So Emma probably draws a hefty salary, I can imagine, right? But sometimes I wonder if it's not enough to bring in somebody like Klopp, right? Now they should just pay Emma whatever they're going to pay Klopp, in my opinion. And that's where I say I love that rule and I have no issues with it. But sometimes I wonder if that factors in, or it's probably more so that we're just fucking stupid and make terrible decisions.
I think that's the operative word there. Really quickly before we get out of here, because we have gone very long. What do we think about the Euro and Copa semifinals coming up this week? Finals, both of them a week from today. We've got Spain against France, England against the Netherlands in the Euros, Argentina take on Canada, as we've mentioned a number of times on this pod today, and Uruguay against Colombia. I would lean to say that Spain and Argentina are the favorites in both, but any differing opinions there?
Colombia's looked really, really dangerous, and
they have looked very good
right now. But honestly, Emi Martinez is the best keeper in the world at the moment, and until somebody beats him, the way that these international tournaments play out, you play safe. You go to you go to a shootout, and you got a guy like Emi Martinez on your side. It says a lot for you. So you're probably right about that. Spain is definitely hot on the Euro side. Spain is definitely hot, but again, when it gets down to it, you go into those finals they become a very physical, slow, draining game, which kind of goes against what Spain does exceptionally well. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know that I have a favorite looking at England and the Netherlands. Southgate has been very shit. The Netherlands have been fun. Cody Gakpo scored a bunch of goals, but I still don't understand. And we were talking in the chat how Mickey doesn't start for that team, but I don't know, man. I think you're probably right, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunity for excitement over the next couple of matches. There's a lot of fuckery that could occur.
Yeah, I think Copa America is just way too close to call, because I will say 3 of the 4 teams remaining, I think probably, would deserve to win it. I don't think Canada's going to do it.
Being so
No
dismissive of the Canadians. They're being so dismissive of those Canadians. They're so plucky.
Sorry to our neighbors, but the other teams just have way too much firepower. And I think Colombia probably is where I would lean right now. With the Euros, obviously, I don't have to say why. I'm kind of, burnt out on it right now. But at this point, I'm just like, let Mickey win a trophy. That's all I have left to root for. I have a reason to dislike everyone else who's left. So, yeah.
Scott, you got any takes? Any hot takes? Who's going to win?
Oh man, I don't want to give my full emotions around England because I don't want to piss off any of our listeners, but I don't think they're going to win. I think Spain's bang on to win the Euros. It seems obvious at this point to me. They're head and shoulders above everybody else, I think, from what I've seen. And Copa America, I think Colombia is probably the safe bet as well. I think they've looked really good, and they're putting 4 or 5 goals past teams like it's nothing. But I'm not going to count out Uruguay either. I don't think Argentina is going to get it done. Honestly, I just don't think that they've looked good enough. But they kind of won the World Cup in a similar fashion, right? So you can never count them out. But I'd have to say Colombia is my favorite, and every reason to think Uruguay can go and get it done too. They've looked really good, and I love their manager, right? So I'll always be a little bit biased towards Bielsa. But Bielsa hasn't won a ton either, right? So we'll see.
We will see. We'll get to talk about it in the coming weeks. That is going to do it for this very lengthy edition of the Tottenham Depot. We went a little long after missing last week, which is totally fine. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page. If you're not watching on YouTube, go to the YouTube page, subscribe, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. The episodes will drop right in your YouTube feed. I know a lot of the kids these days are watching everything on YouTube. So check us out there. You can see our shiny faces on the screen. You can also leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show as we barrel toward another season. We've been doing this show for quite a while now, guys. It's been a couple of seasons. I think we're heading into our 4th full season of doing the Tottenham Depot, 187 episodes in. It has been a joy and a pleasure, and we're going to continue all the way to the start of this new season. Follow us on the social medias at Tottenham Depot. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. Follow Todd at TC_Show. Follow Scott at Scott G Bird. You can follow me at A Stedka. Till next week, we will talk to you then. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.